simply holding on to a network or a flexible license for longer than is necessary to perform a task, therefore denying other users that license when it should really have been returned back to the license pool. And we have to think, why does this happen? We look at this, certainly in my time as a CAD and PLM manager, I've seen on several occasions people get into work early. They launch all their applications. So we were using Siemens tools, so they would launch their NX, Teamcenter, maybe Mentor Graphics, and they would open up some work parts and they would start editing them just to make sure that they pulled the appropriate license. And at that stage, they would head off, get a coffee, or go and stand around the water cooler, catch up with friends, maybe go to the morning meeting. But the point of this is that they would get there early in the morning and pull that license and reserve it for themselves. And this is a problem because typically for companies, they won't be using, they won't have enough licenses for all of their staff. And most of the companies we see, if you have 100 engineers, you probably license for about 60, 65 engineers, because you can be sure that some of them are on holiday, some of them are out on business trips, and a percentage of them just won't be using the tools at that point in time. Obviously, if you have all of your engineers, all 100 engineers coming in the morning and reserving their licenses, then you're going to find that not everybody can actually get a license because you've only got about 65 licenses. So this is where we talk about license ratios and license optimization. Have you ever experienced that? I know I have. Talking to many others, they know that's exactly what happens. So we need to see if we can train that behavior, and we'll talk about how we do that later. Now, we have come across on a couple of occasions some people who are really crafty, and it's about running scripts to keep their sessions alive. So some software applications will actually pull a license back automatically. We'll talk about that again later. But they actually have got a script that kind of pings or keeps their license application alive, so their license never get returned. Now, that is very devious, I would say. Doesn't happen very often, but using our tool, our solution, you'll find you should be able to see exactly which people are doing, and that kind of helps you track down what's happening. But rather than doing things on purpose and hoarding licenses, this can happen by mistake as well. So how do users keep their licenses by mistake? Well, certainly during COVID, this has become more of an issue, more prevalent, and it happened certainly beforehand as well. So you may find that on your desk, you have a high-powered CAD workstation, but actually you're running from a different location. So you're actually maybe away on business, or from a COVID point of view, you're working from home. Rather than pulling huge amounts of data across the network, you can actually remote desktop or similar into your CAD workstation on your desktop back in the office, and that allows you to run some pretty complex solves using the GPUs or the CPUs kind of on those machines, without having to have that throughput at home. Now, what we often find when we first work with a customer is that companies that have that capability, users will simply be remote into the desktop, they'll do their CAD work, or they'll run some simulations, and when they're finished, they simply disconnect. Now, disconnecting is not the same as closing down the parts, closing down the application on the remote workstation. So we often see then that people keep these licenses on their remote workstations for 24 hours, 48 hours. They're simply running these licenses all the time, which is not very good for license optimization. And it's also becoming more prevalent also with cloud hosting, remote VPU workstations that sit across the cloud via Microsoft Azure or Amazon AWS. More and more people are logging into remote workstations to run kind of compute and high vGPU type processes. So this can happen by mistake, and we'll look at this as well. Another one also is simply running licenses on multiple workstations. And how can this happen? Well, quite often I've seen it happen so many times. Is you have your engineers sat out in the offices, but they come in to do a design review in the conference room. Log in. Let's log into SolidWorks. They show off their designs, take some feedback. One of the managers there says, "Right, come on, we need to make those changes right away. We've got a deadline." So the engineer goes scurrying out to make the changes, but he forgets to log out here, and he's ultimately consuming a license on the conference room computer and the computer back at his desktop, which is not a good situation to have. We also see commonly in labs as well, so electrical labs, all manner of different things. You might have a PC or two where you're doing some testing. So again, the engineer might log into this computer and pull up SolidWorks or Cadence or some kind of electrical software, the same software he has running on his desktop back in his office. And of course, he's consuming two sets of licenses, when what he should have done is close down the tool on his office. So he's then only consuming one license per person. So why does this matter? Well, users hoarding licenses, either actively or by mistake, the bottom line is it's costing your company money. You're burning money on licenses which you shouldn't need to. If they're not fully utilized, then you're spending more money than you should be. I mean, less licenses in the license pool is obviously forcing the company to make investment into unnecessary additional licenses. No one wants that. I've certainly been in situations where chief engineers or management staff have come along, bang their fists on the table. Right, we need more licenses. We can't have people having these license denials. And it's only when you can prove and show them the information as to why the majority of the time people aren't using the full licenses, and that maybe we could change our working practices a little more. When you can show that evidence about what can be saved, then the management actually pat you on the back and think, well, no, this is good because we don't need to spend that money. All the savings can be made. So it directly affects department budgets and ultimately the profitability of your business as well. So it is critical as to what we do.